I was 100 feet up in the cab of my crane, hooked to a steel load I could not set down, when I looked out across the rooftops and saw my wife standing where she had no business being, with a man I called my friend. And the cruelest part, the part I'll carry the rest of my life, is that I couldn't do a thing about it. I had 8 tons hanging off my hook and a crew of men down below trusting me with their lives. And a man does not let go of a load because his heart just stopped. So I sat up there in that glass box and I finished my lift, smooth and safe, while my whole world came apart 2 blocks away and there was nothing. Nothing. I could do but watch and keep my hands steady. I'm going to tell you up front that this story has a different shape than most, and it's the part I most want you to stay for. I did not beat them by being stronger than them, or louder, or meaner. I beat them by finding the one person in the world who was carrying the exact same weight I was, and letting her be my counterweight. By the time it was done, the man down there beside my wife and the woman beside him had both lost the whole life they thought they were building, and 2 wronged people walked out of it standing tall. Where are you listening from tonight? Tell me. I want to know who's out there. And stay to the end, because the thing a crane taught me about how a man actually lifts something too heavy to lift alone is the thing that saved me. And I think some of you are trying to lift yours by yourself right now, and it's going to tip you over. My name is Kurt. I'm 46 years old, and I run cranes in Oregon. Mobile cranes, crawler cranes, the big iron, the machines that pick the heavy steel and set it where the building's going to stand. I've done it my whole working life. I was married to Gina for 17 years. We have 2 kids, a boy named Nate, who's 14, and a girl named Ella, who's 11. And there's a 4th and 5th person you need to know about right at the start. A couple named Craig and Robin, because for a dozen years they were our best friends in the world. 2 couples, joined at the hip, vacations together, our kids grew up together, weekend cookouts, the whole thing. Craig was the man I'd have called my brother. I'm going to tell you how I found out my wife and my best friend had been carrying on behind both their families' backs, and how the woman it should have made my enemy became the truest ally I've ever had. If you're new to this channel, this is a place for the men who carry the heavy load and don't say much about it. The ones who keep their word, work the long hours, and find out one ordinary day that the people they trusted most were the ones doing the damage. I'm not selling anything, and I'm not going to tell you to go put a man through a wall, even when he's earned it. I'm just a man who got the worst load of his life dropped on him and figured out how to set it down without anybody getting crushed. Telling it straight, in case it helps you do the same. If that's why you're here, subscribe and stick with me, because somewhere out there is a man trying to lift his alone right now. And folks like you passing this along is how it reaches him. Let me start with the trust, because you cannot understand a betrayal this deep without understanding how much was trusted. I was a provider, the way the men who raised me were. Crane work is good work and hard work, and it goes where the steel goes, which is not always close to home. Big jobs, far jobs, early mornings before the city's awake, long days in the cab, sometimes a stretch living near a job 2 hours off so I could be the first one in the seat at sunup. The money's good because the responsibility is enormous, because there is a whole building and a whole crew riding on the man in that cab keeping his head. So I was gone a lot, and gone hard, and I came home tired and proud, and I thought that was the job of a husband, to carry the weight and keep the lights on and the accounts full, hold on to how much I was gone, because the same long shifts that built my family's life were the empty hours that let it rot from the inside while I was up in a cab somewhere, lifting steel for strangers. Gina and I started with about nothing. I was a young oiler working my way up to the seat, and she believed in me before I'd earned it. We built a good life, a house in a decent neighborhood, 2 kids, a yard, the whole picture. And a big part of that picture, for a dozen years, was Craig and Robin. We met them when our oldest kids were in diapers, and the four of us just fit. The way you sometimes find another couple and it clicks. Craig and I fished together, worked on each other's trucks, sat on each other's porches. Gina and Robin were thick as thieves, on the phone every day, two families that ran in and out of each other's houses without knocking. My kids called them aunt and uncle. I trusted Craig with my house key. I trusted him with my kids. I trusted him, God help me, with my wife. The way you trust a brother, which is to say completely, and without ever once thinking about it. That's the trust that got broken. Not just a marriage, a whole little world of four grown-ups and a pack of kids who thought they were one big family. I want you to sit with what that kind of friendship is worth to a working man, because it makes the wound make sense. When you do what I do, gone on the far jobs, up in the cab all day, you don't keep a wide circle. You get a handful of people you'd take a bullet for, and you hold them close. Craig was the top of that short list. He was the man I called when my truck broke down at midnight. The man who came and sat with Gina in the hospital waiting room when Ella was born early and I was 4 hours away on a job and couldn't get back in time. Let that one land. Because I didn't understand the whole weight of it until later. The man who sat holding my scared wife's hand the night our daughter came into the world, while I raced down the interstate trying to get home, was the same man who would one day be holding that same hand across a sidewalk table. He'd been let into the deepest, most tender rooms of my family, the ones you only open for blood, and he'd used the key I gave him to rob the place. I'll tell you about a warning I waved off, because it's the same one every blindsided man waves off. In the last couple of years, Gina had pulled back from me, gotten quiet, gotten a little cold, and I'd chalked it up to the long marriage and my long hours. And she'd gotten closer to Craig and Robin, or so I thought. More time over there, more group texts, more reasons for the families to be together. And I'd thought, isn't that nice? Our wives are best friends, our families are close. A crane operator of all people should know that you respect the load chart, that you pay attention to the small signs of strain, the groan in the boom, the lean you can feel before you can see it. Because by the time a crane is visibly tipping, it is already too late to save it. There were signs of strain in my marriage for 2 years. I felt the lean. I just trusted the machine too much to read it. And let me tell you about a counterweight, since it's the heart of this whole thing. People look at a crane and they think the power is in the boom, in the long arm reaching up to pick the load. It isn't. The real secret of a crane is the counterweight, the great mass of steel bolted onto the back of the machine, tons of dead weight that nobody on the ground ever looks at. That counterweight is the only thing that keeps the whole rig from tipping forward onto its face the instant you pick up a heavy load. The boom does the reaching, the counterweight does the holding. Without that dead weight on the back balancing the load on the front, the strongest crane in the world flips over and kills everybody. Remember that, because I'm going to come back to it. And it's the only reason I'm still standing. So that day, up in the cab, I had a big steel pick going, a long, careful lift, and I was waiting on the signal, holding the load, when I glanced out across the rooftops on my break, the way you do from up there where you can see half the city. And down below, 2 blocks over, at a little restaurant with tables out on the sidewalk, was my wife, Gina, who'd told me that morning she had errands and a lunch with Robin. And she was not with Robin. She was at a table with a man, leaning in close, the way you only lean towards someone you've got no distance left from. And his hand was on hers. And I knew that man. I'd know him from a mile up. It was Craig, my friend, my brother, my kid's uncle, sitting at a sidewalk table holding my wife's hand while I hung 100 feet over their heads with 8 tons on my hook. I want to tell you what that did to me, up there. And it is a particular kind of torture I would not wish on any man, because I could not move. I had a load in the air and a crew on the ground, and I am the one thing standing between that steel and somebody's death. And you do not get to fall apart in that seat. So I did the hardest thing I have ever done with my hands, which was nothing, which was finish the lift. I waited for my signalman, and I made the pick. And I swung that load slow and true and set it down soft as a feather right where it needed to go. Perfect. Professional. While my marriage and my best friendship died on a sidewalk 2 blocks away. I have set 10,000 loads. That one nearly killed me, and not a soul on that crew knew a thing was wrong. Because the man in the cab keeps his head or people die. I had the rest of that shift up there too. Hours of it. Hands working the controls on pure muscle memory while my whole mind sat on that sidewalk image. And I'll tell you a strange thing that came to me in that glass box. Looking down at the little far-off shapes of my wife and my best friend. Up in a crane, you are completely alone. There is one seat. Nobody can climb up and sit with you. You are the loneliest man on any job site, sealed in glass 100 feet up. And on that particular day, I understood that loneliness all the way to the bottom. Because the 2 people I'd have called to help me carry a thing this heavy were the exact 2 people who dropped it on me. The man I'd call when my world fell apart was down there holding the reason it was falling apart. I have never in my life felt as alone as I did finishing that shift. And that loneliness, it turned out, was the most important thing that happened to me. Because it taught me what I was about to need, which was a way to not be alone with this. When I climbed down at the end of that shift, I did not drive to that restaurant. I want you to hear that. Because everything good that came after depended on it. Every cell in my body wanted to go find Craig and put him through a wall. But I'd had a whole afternoon up in that cab, hands busy, mind running cool and steady, to think it through. And I'd come to a decision that surprised me. I was not going to react. I was going to be a crane operator about it. I was going to figure out the load, respect the chart, and find my counterweight. Because a man does not lift a thing this heavy by main strength. He lifts it with balance and a crew he can trust. And right then I had neither. And I needed both before I picked up 1 ounce of this. The signs, once I let myself read them, had all been there. Every one with an innocent answer, because the answer was always our dear friends. The extra time at Craig and Robin's, which I'd thought was our families being close, and which had really been my wife finding reasons to be near another man. The group text that Gina would smile at and then go quiet about. The way she and Craig had 100 little easy moments at the cookouts that I'd read as old friends, and now understood was something else hiding in plain sight. Right in front of me. Right in front of Robin. Right in front of all our kids. The phone that had grown a passcode. The errands that ran long. The lunches with Robin that I'd find out. Robin had never been at. The way Gina had started suggesting the 2 families do everything together, every weekend, every trip, which I'd taken as her loving our friends, and which was really a woman engineering proximity to the man she wanted. The way she'd come alive on the days we were headed to Craig and Robin's and go flat on the days we weren't. They hadn't even had to hide much, because who suspects the affair that's happening inside the friendship? At your own cookout, with your own kids running through the yard. That was the genius of it, and the cruelty of it both. They'd hidden it in the last place either of us would ever look, which was right out in the open, inside the trust. Now here is where my story turns, and it's the part I most want you to hear, because it goes against everything the angry voice in your head will tell you to do. I thought about Robin, Craig's wife, Gina's best friend, the woman who, by every rule of how these things go, should have been my enemy, the other half of the enemy camp. And I realized, sitting in my truck in my driveway a couple of nights later, that Robin was not my enemy at all. Robin was the only other person on this earth carrying the exact same weight I was carrying. She'd been betrayed by the same two people, in the same way, with the same depth of trust broken. She had as much to lose and as much reason to be careful as I did. And it hit me, like a load chart snapping into focus, that I had been about to try to lift this whole impossible thing by myself, by main strength, raging and alone, and that I was going to tip right over and crush my own kids in the wreck. What I needed was a counterweight, and there was exactly one in the whole world, and her name was Robin. So I did the hardest, strangest thing in this whole story. I called Robin, and I asked her to meet me somewhere quiet, away from both our houses, and I told her I had something hard to tell her about Craig and Gina. And when we sat down, before I could even get the careful words out, Robin looked at me with a face I'll never forget, tired and sad, and not one bit surprised. And she said, "Kurt, I've known for 4 months. I've been waiting to see if you knew." And then she opened a folder. I want you to understand what Robin had done, because it humbled me. While I'd been up in my cab trusting the world, this woman had been quietly, methodically building a case. She'd seen it before I had, felt the lean in her own marriage, and instead of exploding, she'd gone cold and careful and started documenting. Dates, places, the works, all of it lawful, all of it clean. Because Robin, it turned out, was a smarter and steadier hand than I'd ever given her credit for in all those years. I'd thought of her as just Gina's bubbly friend. She'd been carrying this alone for 4 months, waiting, protecting her kids, getting her ducks in a row. And when I walked in carrying my half of the same weight, the two of us set our loads down on that table together. And for the first time since I'd looked out that cab window, the tipping feeling stopped. I had my counterweight, she had hers, and balanced against each other, the two of us could lift a thing neither of us could have lifted alone. I'll be honest about how strange and how healing that meeting was, because I think it matters. I'd walked in, braced to deliver the worst news of a woman's life, and instead, I found somebody who already lived in the same wreckage I did, who'd cried the same nights, who'd looked at the same group photos and felt the same sickness, who knew exactly what it was to have your best friend and your spouse be the same betrayal. There is a particular loneliness in being betrayed that nobody who hasn't felt it can reach, and across that table was the one person who could reach it, because she was standing in the identical spot. We didn't fall into each other's arms. We didn't even cry much that first time. We just sat there, two grown-ups who'd been made fools of by the people they loved, and felt the relief of not being the only one who knew. By the end of that coffee, the panic that had been riding my chest since the cab had gone quiet, replaced by something steadier and colder and far more useful, which was a plan and a partner. We made a plan, and it was a calm one, because two steady people who've stopped panicking are a dangerous thing to a pair of liars. We each got our own lawyer, quiet, separate, good ones. We agreed we would not tip our hands, not to Craig, not to Gina, not to anybody, until we were both ready to move at the same time. Because here was the thing we both understood. Craig and Gina thought they were building towards something, a life together once they each found a way out of their marriages on their own timeline. Soft landings, managed exits, the whole careful fantasy. And they had no idea that both their safety nets were about to be pulled at the exact same moment. Robin protected her family's finances. I protected mine. We each documented what our own lawyer needed, and we picked a day. My lawyer, a sharp and practical woman, told me how Oregon works, and it's worth knowing. Oregon's a no-fault state, she said, so the affair itself won't win you a jackpot in the property split. Don't go in expecting the court to punish them for you. It won't. What it will do is divide things equitably, and the crane experience I'd built, the operating, that was mine, and we'd protect what was protectable. The kids, she said, get decided on their best interest, and Kurt, You've got a strong case there just by being the steady, present, employed father whose life isn't the one coming apart. So do this clean, she said. Don't move out. Don't drain a thing. Don't confront. Document, protect, and file when you're ready. It was the same discipline as a lift. Respect the chart. Don't pick up more than you can hold. Move when it's safe and not 1 second before. The coordination with Robin made all of it stronger. And this is the part I want any man in a mess like mine to understand. Two betrayed spouses moving together aren't just two sad people leaning on each other. They are two cases that corroborate each other, two timelines that line up, two sets of clean evidence that tell the same true story from two angles. Where one of us might have been waved off as a bitter, suspicious spouse imagining things, the two of us together was simply the truth, documented twice. Liars count on each of their victims being alone and off balance and easy to gaslight. The one thing they never plan for, the thing that takes the whole game away from them, is their two victims comparing notes and moving as one. We didn't need the law to punish the affair. We just needed to not be alone and not be in a hurry. And between us, we had both. I'll tell you about the night I nearly lost my grip, because it'll show you how hard the holding was. There was a cookout, one of the last ones before the day Robin and I had picked, and we'd both agreed we had to keep up appearances right to the end so they wouldn't get spooked. So there I was in my own backyard, flipping burgers, and Craig walked up and put his arm around my shoulders, easy as anything, and called me brother, and asked how the big downtown job was going. My friend, with his arm around me. 2 weeks after I'd watched him hold my wife's hand from 100 feet up. And everything in me wanted to turn around and end it right there, the whole charade, in front of everybody. I had the truth in my pocket and his arm on my shoulders, and it would have been so easy to detonate it. But I looked across the yard, and there was Robin, catching my eye, steady, a tiny shake of her head. Not yet. Hold the load. And I thought about our plan, and our kids, and the day we'd picked. And I clapped Craig on the back and said the job was going fine. And I flipped the burgers. And I held. That little shake of Robin's head was the counterweight doing its job. Alone, I'd have tipped. Balanced against her, I held. I want to say something to the men hearing this, who are sitting on what they know, smiling at people they want to throw through a wall. Because I know that's some of you. That control is the hardest thing in the world. And it does not feel like strength while you're doing it. It feels like cowardice. It feels like you're letting them win every minute you don't blow it up. I promise you it is the opposite. Every minute I held that load instead of dropping it was a minute I was setting up a clean, safe, devastating lift instead of a wreck that would have crushed my own kids first. The man who explodes feels powerful for about 10 seconds, and then spends years cleaning up what he broke. Usually having handed the other side every weapon they needed. The man who holds, and plans, and lifts when it's safe. He wins. And he wins clean. And his kids never have to remember the night their daddy came apart in the backyard. Hold the load. The lift is coming. When the day came, we lifted together, clean and simultaneous. And it was a thing of beauty in the way only a perfectly balanced lift is. Robin filed, and I filed, on the same day with our separate clean cases. And Craig and Gina got hit from both sides at the exact same moment. Both their marriages ending at once. Both their families informed. Both of them suddenly, very publicly accountable to two spouses who, it turned out, had known and planned and moved as one. The soft landing they'd been counting on, the managed exit, the careful timeline, all of it vanished in a single day. They'd thought they were running toward a new life together. What they got instead was 2 divorces dropped on them at once, 2 sets of lawyers, 2 betrayed spouses who'd refused to play the parts assigned to them, and a whole community that now knew exactly what the two of them had been doing inside two families' trust. I'll tell you what that day felt like. Because it was not the explosion I'd once wanted up in that cab. It was quiet. It was almost gentle, on my end, which is the strangest part. There was no screaming match, no scene, no fist through a wall. There was just paper, served clean and calm, and at the same hour as Robin's, and the two of them realizing all at once that the ground they'd been standing on had been surveyed and undermined for months while they thought they were getting away with it. The power of it wasn't in rage. It was in the coordination, in two wronged people moving as one machine, balanced and patient and impossible to knock over. Gina came to me white and shaking, asking how long I'd known, asking how I could plan something like this behind her back. And I'll admit there was a hard justice in being asked that question by her, of all people. I told her, calm as a man setting a load, that I'd done exactly what she'd done, kept a secret and made a plan. Except mine was lawful and in the daylight, and that I'd had help carrying it from the one person who understood. She knew right then who that was, and the look on her face when she understood that Robin had been my counterweight all along is a thing I'll remember a long time. And here's the part about the cascade. The consequences neither of them saw coming. A thing built in secret cannot survive daylight, and theirs didn't. Once it was all out, once there was no thrill of the secret and no soft landing, and just the cold, hard wreckage of what they'd done to two families and a pack of kids. Craig and Gina's grand romance lasted about as long as a snowball in August. It turns out that what feels like love when it's hidden often turns out to be just the hiding. And once Robin and I yanked the cover off it at the same moment, the thing underneath couldn't stand on its own. They blamed each other. They came apart. Last I heard, they weren't even together. The two people who'd burned down two families to be together, left with the ashes of both, and not even each other to show for it. I take no joy in that, and I mean that. But I'd be lying if I didn't tell you there's a justice in it that I never had to lift a finger to arrange. They set their own load swinging. Robin and I just stopped holding it up for them. Robin and I came out of it standing, both of us. We are not together, before anybody asks, because that's not what this was. That's the kind of cheap turn a made-up story takes, and this isn't that. What we are is something rarer. We are two people who saw each other at the absolute bottom and held the line together with total honesty and not 1 ounce of anything to be ashamed of. We co-parent near each other now, our kids still close, and we look out for each other the way two people do who survived the same wreck. I kept my crane career and my dignity and my kids primary, because I was the steady one. I never ran Gina down to those kids, not once, because they need their mother even now, and a man who poisons his children to win has lost the only load worth carrying. I just found my counterweight and made my lift and set my family down on safe ground. I won't pretend I came through without scars. And I'll own my peace, because a man always has one. I was gone too much, up in too many cabs on too many far jobs. And I told myself the long shifts were love, when they were really just easier than the harder work of being home and present, and reading the strain in my own wife's face. She'd gone quiet and cold for 2 years, and I trusted the machine instead of checking the lean. Her choice, and Craig's, to do what they did inside our friendship. With our kids calling them aunt and uncle, that was a cruelty all their own that I will never excuse as long as I live. But I'd left my marriage untended, up in that cab for years. And a man who won't own his part learns nothing and tips over the same way twice. So here's what a tired crane operator would tell you tonight, for whatever it's worth. You cannot lift the heavy load by yourself. That's the whole truth of my trade, and it turned out to be the whole truth of the worst year of my life. People think strength is the answer, that if you're just strong enough, angry enough, man enough, you can pick up anything alone by main force. You can't. A crane doesn't lift 8 tons with strength, it lifts it with balance. with a counterweight on the back nobody looks at, and with a crew of people in perfect trust. The operator and the rigger and the signalman all moving as one. When the heaviest load of your life drops onto your hook, the betrayal, the divorce, the wreck of everything you trusted, do not try to lift it by yourself with your bare hands and your rage, because you will tip forward and crush the very people you're trying to save. Find your counterweight. Find the one other soul who's carrying the same weight, and balance against them, and lift it together by the chart, clean and slow and true. I found mine in the last person on earth I'd have expected, the wife of the man who betrayed me, and the two of us, balanced, lifted a thing that would have crushed either of us alone. And I know what some of you are thinking, that you don't have a Robin, that there's no perfect counterweight sitting out there waiting for you. Maybe not. But I'd have told you the same thing the day before I called her, that I was utterly alone with this. Your counterweight might not be the other betrayed spouse. It might be a brother, an old friend you've drifted from, a pastor, a good lawyer, a quiet man at work who's been through it. It might be a stranger on the other end of a helpline at 2 in the morning. The point is not who it is. The point is that you stop trying to be the whole machine by yourself. A man alone with a load this heavy tips over every single time. I have seen it on job sites and I have seen it in life. And the wreck is always worse than the load ever was. Reach out. Find your balance. Then, and only then, make the lift. I've still got my seat and my cranes, and I still set the heavy steel where the buildings are going to stand. And I'm home more now, because I learned the hard way what a man loses up in the cab while he's not looking. My kids are with me, and they're good kids, and they've still got Robin's kids in their lives. And there's a strange grace in that. 2 broken families that held on to the good part. The house is quieter and a great deal more honest. People ask me sometimes, the few who know the whole story, whether it's strange that Robin and I are still close, whether the kids think it's odd. And I tell them the truth, that there's nothing odd about it at all, that of everyone in this whole sad business, Robin is the one person who was never anything but honest with me, who carried her weight and let me carry mine and never once asked me to be less than I was. Our kids needed each other, all those cousins that weren't. And we weren't going to take that from them on top of everything else, just to spite 2 people who'd already lost. We salvaged the one good thing from the wreck, and we kept it. That's not weakness either. That's a man and a woman who'd both been to the bottom, deciding the kids had lost enough. Tell me where you're standing when you hear this. And tell me, if the heaviest load of your life dropped on your hook tomorrow, do you know who your counterweight would be? I hope you do. And if you don't, I hope you'll have the courage I almost didn't, to look in the last place you'd expect and ask for help carrying it. You were never meant to lift it alone. Nobody is. Find your counterweight, respect the chart, and make the lift together.